You know, it's funny, on my way up here, so it's hard to see and it's all washed out, but I'm on top of a mountain and I saw this like driving school student driver and I was like, huh, seems so long ago that I had to learn how to drive. I don't know, made me feel kind of existential. Hello and welcome back. This week I'm really excited because I'm reviewing Stuart M. Buck's poetry collection, Blue the Green Sky. I figured, even though it's hard to see, blue sky, greenery around, the mountains seemed kind of appropriate. All the good spots were taken though, so here we are in my car where it's a little quieter and there are fewer people. So let's get into the poetry review. I didn't know what to make of it at first. The very first the very first poem starts off where Buck, or the narrator, it's a little unclear how... It's clear that it's a very personal collection, but it's a little unclear if Stuart M. Buck, as the poet, is also the narrator in all of the stories. Or poems. I don't know why I keep saying stories and books. Poems. But the narrator in the first poem basically starts out by saying, I was thinking about killing myself, and then I saw a cat, and I was like, ooh, we're going dark. And you know, I've had some other heavy poetry reads like Elizabeth Horan and a few others. I'm having a hard time thinking of them at the moment because I'm just focused on this one. But it was interesting because it didn't stay that way. At least not in the sense that like they're all about death and suicide. Like, there are recurring themes of death, but I think it's more like in the sense of thinking about life, almost. Like thinking about how death is part of life and thinking about how it's just this big event, if you will. And you know, it changes throughout the poetry collection because it does start off kind of heavy, and there's this sense of existentialism, like seeing that car and the student driver. Then there's also like a little bit of nostalgia, which I think kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with existentialism. And then there's something akin to hope. Like, there's this one poem, and I mentioned it explicitly in the blog, and I don't have the list of the poems in front of me, so I apologize for being somewhat unprepared. But it's interesting because it talks about how, like, the end of the world, there's that thing again, there's going to be a comet, and in those final moments, you, like, kind of make peace with everyone, if you will, and you tell people that you love them. And the very last bit is, like, this is the first and last, essentially, time that you'll ever hear that I loved you most of all. And I just thought that was really profound. And then there was another poem, and again, I'm forgetting the titles. I'm actually, side note, really bad at reading the titles of poems. I just kind of often skip them, which is not the thing to do with this poetry collection. Like, the title is everything, in a sense. And then there's this other poem, which I'm forgetting the name of, but I'll try to put it in here, that's basically talking about quantum physics. Now, I am not a STEM person. I really only like anatomy, so physics was just really difficult for me to conceptualize. But I really liked the way that Stuart Buck, or the narrator, explained it, because basically it's saying there's all these different universes, and even though you're not with me right now, like, it's a solace to me that in some universe we are together and we are happy and we are loved. And it was just really beautiful. It was a really, sorry for that honk, it was a really nice change, I guess, because I think, now that I'm thinking about it, I think heavy isn't quite the right word to describe Buck's works. I think heady almost is a better one, because it is very much a type of poetry collection that makes you think. And then it makes you think twice about what you think about his poems. And I think that's just a really fascinating, beautiful thing. And when poets can do that for readers, it just makes it that much more impactful. So even though some of the poems are a little difficult to read just because of their subjects, I think overall they were all really, really good. They were all really well thought out. And you know, the kind of nice thing about this collection, especially if you're not someone who's like, oh my gosh, I love poetry, is that it's really short. Like, it doesn't take a lot of time to get through it, which is kind of like a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, so you finish it pretty quickly. But on the other hand, you can also miss a lot. And so that's why I do like the complexity and nuance and layered feelings of Buck's work, because it kind of, you want to rush through because you're like, oh, this is so quick. These are such short poems. But it's like, oh gosh, it's bouncing, sorry. But it's like, oh, well, is that what this poem's really about? And you know, that's, I think, what I like a lot about poetry is that, and I've said it before, not every poem has to mean the same thing to everybody. And I think this is definitely a collection that proves that, emphasizes that. So yeah, I definitely recommend. It was a really interesting read. It was a really enjoyable read, even some of the more serious poems. Yeah, I can't really think of too many reasons why you wouldn't want to read it, unless like some of those topics like death are particularly triggering for you. But even so, I think there are enough other poems that make it worth it, in a way. That's all I've got for Stuart M. Buck's Blue the Green Sky. And next week I will be reviewing Charlie Mackessy's The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, and I'm excited to bring my thoughts to you. So in the meantime, happy reading and thanks.